Welcome to the GAME.minder Report, your weekly source of upcoming gaming news and information. It's December 15th, 2012.
January 15th, Jim.
I'm Ron Burgundy. Hey, I'm just reading exactly
Go
what
F yourself, San Diego.
I'm reading exactly. No, I read exactly
Don't read
what's
anything that's on that prompter.
Anything.
Yes, it is in fact January 15th. Someone needs to update the script. I guess that would be me.
That would be
me. All right, so I will promise that I will. I'm Ron Burgundy. I promise that I will update the script before next week. Oh boy. So what's going on, Jim? How are you?
I'm good. I'm
I see you're in a suit again.
still suiting up.
Working stiff.
You know it.
You're looking pretty dapper though. I like this particular combination.
You like that?
I do like it.
It's kind of fun. It's this weird, like, I don't know what dichotomy. That's probably not the right word,
Probably not.
But like, you wake up and it's like, okay, I know what suit I'm gonna wear, but ooh, I get to pick my tie and shirt. It's like this like huge combo. Like I'm gonna go with the royal blue with the French blue with the gray micro check. Oh yeah.
I wish I could say I didn't know what you were talking about, but I actually do, because I'm going to a party for the launch house in a couple weeks, and picking out the tie and the shirt that I'm going to wear with the tuxedo has been fun. Let's put it that way.
I mean, men make fun of women for their taking so much time and this, but men that wear suits take just as much of maybe thought. Maybe not time, because this literally took like 10 minutes to get all together from shower.
I can literally feel our audience getting smaller as we have this conversation. So let's talk about something that's game related. Not that I don't like this conversation, but it's not game related. Okay, gamify your tie choice maybe, and then we can talk about it next week.
Like The Sims? So, like this doesn't happen in The Sims.
So the next Xbox and the PlayStation 4, now there's a rumor that they are going to actually be unveiled in March. They're not even going to wait until E3. That is the rumor now, that they're going to release them, or not release them, but announce them right around GDC.
Before E3?
Before E3.
Okay.
That is the new rumor. Now, obviously the conspiracy theorist in me wants to think that this is because the Ouya is having their big launch party at GDC, and they want to basically say, okay, oh, you're making your nice little Ouya launch party? That's great. Well, we're Microsoft and Sony, and now we're going to announce our big next-generation consoles, just to, like, drown them out.
I bet it's just to drive E3 tickets. I just got my email that said the alumni, people who've been to GDC before, right, you're basically pre-order time, or you're
okay.
It's not because of the Ouya. I'm sorry, bro. I know that you think it's.
I'm not saying I don't think it's because of the Ouya. It's probably because of GDC. But I can't imagine that the idea of there's probably going to be. I don't know, man. I'm saying I think that if they're going to do something big at GDC, because yes, GDC is a developer conference.
And I don't think it's for GDC. I think it's for E3. I think it's for people to say, I want to get get booked for LA and get my tickets to LA because.
Yeah,
because I'm not going to play it at GDC.
I'm
going to play it at E3.
I see where you're going with it. Well, the thing is, I mean, if they're going to announce it at E3, there's going to be something for people to look at.
No, they announced the Wii U 2 E3s ago.
And they didn't show anything?
They didn't show anything. It was last year's E3 when you can be playing it.
Interesting.
So you announce it before you play it at E3.
All right. Well, I mean, anyway you slice it, obviously we know that this is a big console release generation year that we're moving into. I mean, the Wii U is already out. Last week we saw the discussion of the Ouya, the Game Stick, the Razer, Project Shield, all of these things. Like everybody, it's definitely the cusp of the next generation.
Yeah,
so,
and it's also interesting because if you remember when they announced the PS3, remember it was the Boomerang controller.
I do remember that.
But then they scrambled and they brought back the DualShock too. It also could be just this could just be the fact, like, all right, we're going to announce and see what the heck we did wrong, so that everyone else can fix it.
Well, and I mean, all indications also seem to be pointing to a more extensive hardware rev this generation. I mean, like the PS2 to the PS3 was basically like way more power in Blu-ray. The PS3 to the PS4 is looking like it might be a bit more of a thing. Like there's the talk of the head-mounted thing, and there's
Well, here's I mean, with everything, what is like? There hasn't been any leaks about dev units or any like before.
But there has.
Oh, there has.
Yeah. In fact, you know what? If I can find one, I'll link to it. But I read was There's definitely been links about the Xbox 720 dev units, and I did read one report about a PS3 dev unit or 4, excuse me, not an Oculus. What do they call Omni? The Omni. So I'll see if I can find that to put in the show notes.
Okay, great.
All right, so let's move on. Disney Infinity. It's the infinite. It's to infinity and beyond, one might say.
Yeah, it's isn't this where now like Skylanders they're gonna have figurines, and
Exactly.
the figurines has
This
like
was-
a code on
Yep,
it or something.
and this was just announced either today or yesterday. But I'm gonna link to the like launch trailer. But it's that sort of gaming thing where there's like a platform and you buy these little plastic characters, and when you put the little plastic character on the platform, they appear in the game. That's what sort of Skylanders has made the big thing right now. And I mean, it's
funny because I don't know if anyone's gonna mention this, and we'll have to do some research to actually put this in the show notes. Radio Shack had like a proprietary game that was exactly like this. It had to do with like trucks or cars.
well, and that's what I was gonna say, is that I know that this thing is not entirely new. I mean, a lot of people are talking about it because Skylanders has become such a big thing, and you know, with kids the age that I have them, I expect that I'll probably be seeing what this whole Skylanders thing is all about sooner rather than later. But I mean, you know, there's always been the ability. Like I've seen other games where like you could take a picture of like a deck of the playing cards,
yeah.
and it would bring that card into the
but
game.
like Radio Shack used to always have like the bootleg, like they had like the ZII, like they would have all the bootleg type things, and like, but people were really into this one like car. It was like a car truck thing,
Interesting.
and it was a console too, and then Skylanders, you know, blew it up. It, you know, the skeptic in me is basically looking back to how G.I. Joe and He-Man was only produced to sell more plastic crap,
right?
and then Pokemon the cartoon was only there to sell more plastic wrapped crap.
And see, this is where this is kind of where I wanted to go with it, because some of like kids love their plastic junk.
Yeah,
everybody knows that. I know that. I got 3. They love their plastic junk, and the programmer brain in me sees this as a huge waste of resources. Like they're making all these plastic crappy things that they don't use at all, except to plug into their thing and unlock digital content, which is going to exist either way. And it frustrates me. Okay, here's what I think the business concern is thinking by building these types of games. We have released games, and we have been spending so much time trying to figure out how to put DRM on these games to keep people from copying things or whatever. What if we just made it so that they had to have this big plastic chunk? This is getting us back to the days of dongles, when you would have software that was like a $1,000 program. In order to use it, you literally had to plug a physical like unlock thing into the side of your computer, and if the software didn't see that thing, it would not boot up. It's the same concept.
Well, here's the other thing too. What
sort
about
of sugar coated and made it kid friendly?
What about then, you know, getting a double bang for your buck, where it's, I mean, nothing's going to stop the kids from playing with the Skylander in the car or like, you know, with their friends. It could promote imagination. Like, oh, I mean, or do they not do that? I don't know.
Well,
like, can you play with the Skylander toy outside? Like,
well, I mean, they're basically this little figurines. So I mean, you can set up 10 of them in a thing and like have a little play session. And believe me, I know that my kids would do that with it. I don't know. I mean, the concept of this game, I really like. It's essentially every single character that's under the Disney umbrella. No word on Star Wars, but that's a new thing.
Well,
but
Marvel.
It's literally, but I mean, it's
Disney
literally
too.
like you saw all the Pixar characters. You know, like The Incredibles, the Monsters Inc.
Wreck-It
Ralph
Ralph
was in there.
Whoa.
And then Jack Sparrow from like the Pirates movies were in there. So and
was Fago, or what was that movie that Johnny Depp did the voice of the lizard?
Oh, Rango?
Rango. Is that a Disney movie?
I don't know. But either way, the point is that putting a lot of these characters together in new and interesting ways could be cool. It's an open world game, I guess. So it's basically, you know, you plug your different characters in and they get to, you know, run around and whatever. I think it could be interesting. But again, I'm still kind of mixed on this idea of like, you know, I don't need any more plastic crap. One of the reasons why I like video games is because I can have one thing that sits right there, and it's an endless world of possibilities.
Right,
I don't have to go buy another piece of plastic.
Right, and when you buy a video game, I'm just going to use Mortal Kombat as an example. When you unlock you know, Sub-Zero, You can't lose him.
Yeah, well, and that is another good
You
point.
can't lose.
It's brilliant marketing. The kids are going to leave it at grandma's house, and then you're going to have to buy them another, Mike Wazowski thing to plug in.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, anyway, so that was just announced. We will be getting that into GameMinder soonish. More on that coming up. But let's get into the main conversation that I wanted to have with you today, because it seems like this is coming to a head. And we're not a political podcast, but there's been lots and lots of talk. It's been building and building and building, and now I think it's finally just going to crest over, and we're going to all start talking about this, is the whole violence in video games thing. And here's why. I'm going to read an excerpt. Ben Kuchera over at Penny Arcade Report wrote a really great article, what the mainstream press won't report, gamers are everywhere and we're doing fine. And so I just want to read a quick little quote from this. The reality is that video games aren't only for children, haven't been for quite some time. I attended a LAN party over the weekend, and everybody who played the games, including violent titles, were married, had children, professional careers, and no criminal records. When the host's little girl toddled into the room to say goodnight, say goodnight to her father, everyone dutifully paused the game and made a conscientious effort to watch their language. This is the reality of modern gaming. There is just as many responsible adults who see gaming as a hobby as there are children playing games in the basement of their parents' homes. I think obviously that sort of covers it pretty well. But the main issue, I think, is that, and we talked about this a little bit with the what was it called, the OS ceasefire that came up after the Connecticut shooting. The idea of gamers saying, you know what, let's take a day, let's just relax, without admitting culpability for these sorts of problems. Let's just at least sit back and recognize that, yes, our hobby does have violence in it. Let's maybe take a moment to just sort of reflect on that. And I participated in that. I know you did not.
I did.
I mean, you didn't play that.
I didn't play, so
you had said to me, you're like, I don't think it's such a great idea. I mean, they're kind of admitting, like, somewhat kind of responsibility, I think is what you said.
Yeah, I was like, well, I have an opinion on this.
Okay,
it's a loud opinion.
Hit me.
Okay, here we go. And we can use metal. We can use
like heavy metal.
We can use heavy metal.
Nice.
Basically, you can take violence in video games and substitute heavy metal. You can substitute getting an award over another person. You can competition. Yeah, you can substitute any of these issues, and it comes down to one thing and one thing only, in my opinion. And I'm not even one of these people. Parenting.
Okay.
And it comes to this: if you are a decent parent, you are not allowing your child to play this game if you don't think he can handle it. Now, I'm not saying like, oh, you have to wait until you're 18, but if you feel like your child is not allowed, it cannot play this, you do not let him play the game or listen to this music.
Sure.
Now, but it goes down to this too. It's like, okay, well, maybe these kids' parents aren't around. Okay, that's fine too. But don't blame the game, because it could be anything. Like, there has been violence in the world since
time. But you know what? So here, let me unpack what you said for just a second, because parenting, don't let your kids see these games. In that, it implies that if they didn't see the games, they wouldn't be violent.
No.
That's all I'm just saying. That's sort of the implication of what you had said.
I said that totally wrong. I'm going to retract that.
Okay.
Parenting. Teach your children how these games, what these games mean. We grew up on Looney Tunes.
Yeah. My
parents grew up on Looney Tunes. My grandparents saw Looney Tunes when they were dating, because it was the 1920s and 30s. It was right after the war. That's when Looney Tunes started.
That's when everybody actually saw things in black and white, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Looney Tunes is the most violent thing you can ever think of. You give someone a bomb, you hand it to them, their face goes black, and no one gets hurt.
Like Tom and Jerry beating the crap out of each other.
Exactly. Now, we won't even talk about the huge racial undertones that were in all these things.
Sure.
But all of a sudden, somewhere in the 80s, or maybe even early 90s, it got to this huge thing. Oh, these are too violent. These are too violent. You can't have the coyote sending dynamite and a pitchfork to the Roadrunner.
Right.
And we got into this handcuff, or I'm sorry, not handcuff, play hands, or what's it called? Kid hands. Kid gloves.
Kid gloves is the word.
Whatever, I'm not a parent. But the helicopter parents who are spending more time being advocate and less time actually parenting, ironically.
Well, yeah, this is what the South Park movie dealt with.
Right. It's like you're too busy trying to save your kid than actually saving your kid.
See, and okay, here's my thing about this, because I do think this is where, I think Ben's article was in a lot of ways a response to the idea that Vice President Biden was basically putting together like a task force. And he was talking to like the NRA and a bunch of other sorts of groups that were basically involved in either guns, the study of gun violence or what have you, media, society, and then video games, as if video games had something to do with it. And the implication was and this was, I'll link to all of the articles that sort of went in order, but the implication was basically like, if you're inviting the video game makers to the table and the video game makers go to the table, they're sort of accepting culpability and saying, yes, we should have a seat at this table because what we do does in fact cause this. And that is, obviously, there's been a huge backlash with people saying that's just simply not the way that it is. We don't cause this.
It's the new thing. Before it was movies.
Well, and a little known fact is actually, in the 1900s, they actually thought, or maybe it was 1800s, they actually thought that the novel was like, kids were not allowed to read novels because they thought that the subject matter in full-length books was inappropriate for kids. I think you and I are on the same page when it comes to the idea of this issue is just, pick the generational thing and move it forward a generation and then just complain about it. But just to play devil's advocate here, I wonder if simply by nature, because here's the thing. A book, a movie, a TV show, music, all of these types of media are not games in one very fundamental way. And that is that you don't participate in them from a narrative point of view. They wash over you.
Actually,
books in some ways you read it and you can imagine
And that's what I was going to say. A book is probably closer to a video game than a movie or music is.
I think that's probably true.
Okay.
I think that's probably true.
Which is
but,
really ironic.
But I do think that the concept of placing yourself within a virtual world, especially as things are going to be starting to get more realistic. We talked about this a few episodes ago as well. The idea that it's like once the graphics get so good that you literally look like you are slitting a guy's throat, and now we're going to be having it in stereo surround with virtual reality and maybe 3D. At what point does it cross over from fantasy into something different? And is that something different dangerous at all? And I'm playing devil's advocate here. Right. I don't necessarily think that, but I think it's an important question to explore.
Well, here's something that I don't think anyone has even, talked about or used as a thesis, if you will.
Yeah.
Paintball. Paintball, you are using a gun.
Yep.
You're pointing it at someone that's a human.
Sure.
We've always been we've been taught guns are dangerous and evil.
Yep.
And you never point a gun at someone unless you're going to use it.
Right.
So paintball does that, and you are the closest to simulating a first-person shooter in real life as you are. You're hiding, you're ducking for cover, you're using strategy. It's a capture the flag.
And cover.
Right. You're using a strategy, it's capture the flag. Right. It's all these things. You're in camo.
It's a war game.
Yes. Shooting, not pretend.
Yeah.
And it kind of hurts.
Yeah.
But that I would think would be more, that would be the closest to we should probably ban that than a video game, because you're actually doing it.
Well, are you though? Because I think this is
shooting
the conversation.
Something.
Okay.
And
you're shooting something,
else.
But it looks okay. So here's the dichotomy. You're physically out in the world with a physical type of firearm, actually shooting somebody, but it looks fake. Versus you're in a digital world where it is fake, but it looks real. Which one of those is more or less an issue in terms of how it affects the person experiencing it?
Then why are cartoons still rated M? Because of violence.
Well, what kind of cartoons? The realistic looking one, sure, but I don't think Looney Tunes is rated M.
It's still drawings. Seriously, if you can't differentiate a real looking cartoon, but still a cartoon versus humans, I think then I don't want to live in this world.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that
because it's still a cartoon.
So okay, when does it stop being a cartoon?
When it's real.
Okay, so Transformers the movie is not a cartoon, or is it a cartoon?
Well,
that's the point, Jim. This is the entire point of this entire conversation.
Is episode 6 a cartoon, or
we are approaching? Sure, but that's my point. We are approaching a unique time in history where we have the ability, not through imagination, but through technology, to create on a real-time interactive basis worlds that don't exist anywhere but appear to. And I think that the question of how that will affect people is not an answered one. That's all I'm saying.
What is wrong? Let me get closer to the mic and we don't have monitors. What is the difference between 2 8-year-olds playing cops and robbers or army with each other using plastic guns going boom, 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 or even the guns that you have the red tip that make the noise, and then they fall down and simulate death? Is it because blood doesn't come out?
Do we know that there is a difference?
That's what I'm asking. That used to be the go-to game. They used to be innocent. Look at the innocent kids playing cops and robbers.
But I guess my point is I don't know that it was that innocent. I know that these days when my son, who like we've watched a little bit of Star Wars, and we watched The Iron Giant.
Okay.
Great movie.
Sure.
Guns, death, themes in this movie. When he started saying something like, I'm going to get shot and I'm going to die, my wife just about jumped out of her skin. He's 4. You know what I mean? She's like, oh my God, where did he learn these? Blah, 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 blah. And in a different age, he might already have his first pop gun. You know what I mean? And the question to me would be, imagining murdering or killing or what have you, may in and of itself be a negative thing that was negative back then. It may be the same amount of negative now that they can do it digitally in games, which is why it comes to the question of let's address gun violence and those sorts of things in all media, not just games, but the portrayal of death and dying and killing in all these sorts of media in some kind of constructive way.
Back when Republicans thought America was great. No, but seriously, back from 1940 to 1950, everyone saw guns because it was the news, it was the war, it was gun nation, and it wasn't it was glorifying it, but in the sense of we're fighting the bad guy, these are heroes, and we should applaud them. Kids were emulating them. We were watching any Bond or propaganda video.
We are going to need to cut this short pretty soon. So.
Okay, so basically what I'm saying is this. There weren't mass shootings back when there were more pictures of guns and war back then.
There were also fewer people, and it was not as... I don't know. You're right. Ish. I think we would need to look at some statistics to know for sure. I think the long and the short of it is this is not a conversation that's finished. And I think anybody who steps up and says, absolutely games should have no part in this conversation, we're done having this conversation, I think that is the only wrong position. Similarly to the way that I feel like the NRA saying, we're not talking about guns anymore. We're not talking about guns as a piece of this problem. I think that's wrong too. I think everything that could be should be put on the table in this conversation. Well,
I'm just going to circle back to the ritual thing. I just think there was better parenting back then than there is now, and that's why there weren't those big things then, and that's why there are now. Parenting. That is my final answer. Better parenting. Forget the guns.
And I will end with saying I'm pretty sure that most of the women and blacks would probably disagree with you who grew up back in that time. Just saying. All right, so we are going to have to finish up because I think we're completely out of time. However, we're not going to talk about what's coming out this week or what went into GameMinder this week because we're still working on getting the parsing under control. You may have noticed that a couple games got in, but they weren't quite right, and then we have to fix them. I plan to have that stuff done this week, so stay tuned. New games coming this week, and I think that's going to basically do it. So that's going to do it for the GameMinder Report this week. If you enjoy what we do, why not subscribe by hitting the button you see right there if you're watching on YouTube, or from the subscribe button on GameMinderReport.com.
And to view the show notes for this episode or to follow any games mentioned today, don't forget to visit GameMinderReport.com/33.
And don't forget to follow GameMinder on Twitter or Facebook, or get the app for your iPhone or Android phone.
And finally, don't forget to buy all your games through the website or app. Every game you pre-order or purchase helps support this show and the service. Signing off for the Game Report, I'm Jim.
And I'm Jeremy, reminding you, don't forget to play.